Samach Chesam Bezi Boilahu on the bottom. L'divrei Omer ein leido leivarim. Hotzia uber es yoda v'achzira v'chazer v'hotzia es yoda v'achzira at sheshlimo l'ruba mahu. Mi amrinan hanafik le'ruba odil makevan dehadar hadar. So we're in the case on the bottom of Samach Chesam Bezi. We spoke about yesterday that a fancy way of saying that if the limb comes out, it's ruined or not ruined, is whether there's a birth for individual limbs or not. If you say that there's a birth for individual limbs, so then you say that as soon as it comes out, that limb is done. And if you say that there's no birth for individual limbs, then if it comes out, it's not done and it can go back in. So they ask, if you say there's no birth for individual limbs, which means that if a limb sticks out, it's not by definition going to be ruined. That's not the Pashup Shah. Pashup Shah, like we said, is that if you stick out a limb, even if it goes back in, that limb is going to be aser. But according to the one who says, Ein Leida Levarim, that if a animal sticks out a limb and then puts it back in, then the limb will be okay, and you won't have to go ahead and not eat that limb. You could eat the entire uber. Hotzi uber as yodav zira. If it put it out and then brought it back, chaz votzi as yodav zira, then put it out and put it back. Ache shlimo lerubo, where it goes ahead and it puts out the entire thing. Now what's the story? Mahu mi amrin and haynafik leruba. Do we say, well, now the majority of the fetus has come out, and therefore it's been born in its entirety? Odil makevan hadar hadar. Each one that went out came back in, and therefore they're not going to combine. So that's the question. The question is, do we assume that the entire fetus was born, in which case they will agree that therefore the fetus will be aser? Or do we say that since it put it back in each time, so we don't combine all of the limbs that came out and then went back in? If you say that each time it went back in it was returned, maybe it would be different. If it puts out one of its forelegs and then you have to cut it off because for the mother, we're chazering from yesterday. And then you had to put out the other foreleg and you had to cut it off. Do you say that the entire majority has emerged because you've cut off a majority of the ubar, or it all has to happen at once? Tashma, this is what we're up to. Ze'aklal. Davar shegufa aser, top of Samach Chesam Aleph. If there's something that's part of the goof of the animal, like we said yesterday, the spleen or the kidneys. If you cut off the spleen or the kidneys and it remains inside the animal, then those things are still usher when you shach the animal because they were separated from the animal inside the animal. But if it's something that's not part of the animal's body, like the fetus that's found inside, we said if you have to open up the mother, you have to make an incision, you have to cut off part of the fetus, then at the end of the day, the fetus is going to be totally mutter, even the part you got to cut off. What does it mean that it's not part of the animal? Is it not to include this case? Is it not to include this case where you go ahead and you cut off a majority of the body of the fetus one by one, and it teaches us that what? That whatever remains inside the body you could still eat? Says Amar Lo, no, we said this includes the case that we mentioned yesterday. If you have a cow, again, hopefully you did yesterday because it's the basis of everything we're saying now. But if you have a cow, so we said that whatever's inside the cow, the uber inside the cow is going to be mutter when you shach the mother cow. And we discussed yesterday when it sticks out part of its body, so then the way that we came out is that part of the body that it stuck out will be aser, but the rest of the body will be mutter. Now we're discussing if it stuck out the rove, if it took out the head, then the entire fetus is going to be aser. If it sticks out numerous parts of the body now at different points, that's what we're discussing now. But in general, the accepted shita is that whatever part of its body it sticks out, even if it puts it back in, it can no longer eat. You can no longer eat because, again, it went outside of the boundaries. But the part that's not been out, you can eat. So now we're saying, well, there's another case. Let's say you open up a cow, you shach the cow, and you open it up and you see a cow inside. Nothing wrong. You can eat that cow without shechita. That's a ben pakua. But let's say you open up a cow, and for some reason you see a deformed cow in there that doesn't have split hooves, or has split hooves that are not split the entire way. Then what do? So we said yesterday that you're still allowed to eat that cow. Why? Because aliba de Rabbi Shimon da afagav dam Rabbi Shimon kalab ben para aser hanimili hechadiyatzu lavir olam v'ben be'eimo shari. So we said that that's within Rabbi Shimon, and he says that what? If a cow gives birth to a deformed cow that doesn't have totally split hooves, and it actually gives birth, then you cannot eat that deformed cow that comes out, because even though we know a cow is a cow is a cow, we said that the simanim are not just to tell us that it's a cow. Every single animal that you want to eat needs to have the specific simanim of chewing its cud and having split hooves, even though it's in the family of cows. That's what we said. But however, the exception is, and that's what we mean over here, that if part of it that's not part of the mother's body is inside, that means that this specific case, it's including this case where if the cow that you open up inside the ubar doesn't have completely split hooves, then ein chanami, you can go ahead and you could eat that cow, even though had that cow been born, you would not have been able to eat it.
But you can't eat a camel inside a cow.
You cannot eat a camel inside a cow, no. Says it, well, no, you cannot eat a camel inside a cow. Correct. Says the Gemara, BAYT Rabbi Chananya, Hotzi Uber as Yado Bazar. So this is going to be a strange question. The Gemara wants to know, we said that if it sticks it out of the mother, then that limb is now usher. And we said yesterday, if you remember, that the only shayla we have is the part that's out is usher. The part that's in is mutter. The point of the severance, what do? We said, well, it depends. If it puts it back in, then the point of the severance was in when you cut it. Therefore, you could eat that part. If it doesn't put it back in, then the point of severance, the machom chatach, was not in. And therefore, even though it wasn't out, it wasn't in, it needs to be in order to be mutter. But now what happens if you bring an animal into the azara to shecht it? You bring a shlamim, or you bring a chatas, and you bring it into the azara to shecht it, and you shech the mother, and it had, at some point, it had put forth its leg. Mahu. Well, what's the question? If it put forth its leg, then the leg is asa. What's the question? No. Migo dahavi mechitza legabe kachim havi nami gabi legabe hai. Odilma legabe dahay lav mechitzi de mechitzas ubar imahui. This is a weird question. The Gemara is saying, we know in general, when we're talking about sticking it outside of its boundary, that's the mother. But maybe when you bring something as a korban, its boundary no longer becomes the mother, its boundary becomes the azara. And therefore, maybe if it sticks out its head in the hand, inside the azara, if it sticks out its hand in the azara, it's like it never left the mother at all. And therefore, lamaisa, now that it puts it back in, you can eat that limb because it never left its boundary. It's a weird question. Why should that be? And the Gemara doesn't seem to have a havamina that if it sticks out... Right, so the Gemara doesn't have that havamina that if it's born in the courtyard, then you can go ahead and you can eat it based on the mother shchita. We're only talking about the limb of an unborn fetus, right? Because the whole thing with the fetus is that it's inside the mother, and if it's connected to the mother, so then we could say that it's still inside of its boundaries. But if it's actually born, I would even suggest if rove comes out, like if the head comes out, then there's nothing to talk about. Then you can't say it's mutter. But if just one little piece of it, the protrusion, which we're saying now is usher because it left its boundary, maybe the boundary is extended in the case of a korban to include the azar. Gemara says, it's an interesting havamina. If you're going to say that, then I'm going to extend it and say, well, kachim kalam needs to be brought in the azar as well. But then it could be eaten in all of Yerushalayim. So maybe as long as an animal is in Yerushalayim, and the ubar sticks out its hand, we consider Yerushalayim to be the entire boundary that it's not leaving. Says Gemara, that's crazy. Kachim kalam Yerushalayim, my time alone coming by. He didn't even make that suggestion because it's a crazy suggestion. De mechitzas ubar imahu hachanami mechitzas ubar imahu. No, don't start to think that we could change boundaries. The boundary of an ubar is its mother and nothing else. By Ilfa. Ilfa says, Hotzi ubar es yoda ben simon lesimon. Very interesting question. Let's say you have a fetus, and we said it put out its leg, and then you shach the mother, so the leg's usher. Let's say you shacht one of the simanim. You have to shach both simanim of an animal. Let's say you shach the trachea, and then before you shach the esophagus, it puts out its arm. What's the shayla mahu? Mi mitzaref siman rishon lit siman sheni litare midei nevelo lo. So there's no question here that you can't eat that leg, because that leg needs to be inside the mother for the entire shechita of the mother. Therefore, the fact that you can or cannot eat that leg is not a question. You definitely cannot eat that leg because that leg was outside of the mother for at least part of the shechita. That's a given. But we said something else. We said that even though you cannot eat the limb that was on the behema, if it was sticking out of the behema when you shechted the mother, we said that the shechita of the mother, although it doesn't enable you to eat the limb, it does not make that limb into an avela. The shechita of the mother keeps it from being an avela. It's similar to shechting a treifa. If you shecht a treifa, we said that the dead animal is not an avela. Similar to shechting a regular animal, the carcass is not an avela. So the question becomes now, do you consider this limb that came out in between to be an avela that's going to be giving off tumah? What's the shaila, if you think about it? It's an interesting shaila. So Rashi explains, what's the shaila? When you started the shechita, there's two things that a shechita can accomplish. The shechita can accomplish A, making the meat mutter to eat, and B, making the carcass not into an avela. When you shechted the first part of the animal, and the entire animal was inside its mother, that shechita, the shechita, let's say, of the trachea, was accomplishing both. It was making the meat mutter, and it was also making whatever's inside not into an avela, right? The second part no longer can make the limb, the meat of the limb mutter, because the limb is already outside now when you're shechting the second siman. So now the shechita is only accomplishing one thing, being able to make that limb not into an avela, but not to be able to eat it. So do you say that when you're doing a shechita and it accomplishes two things, you can combine that with a shechita accomplishing one thing? The Gemara is going to say, of course you do. What's the hamin and not? Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, Kal v'chomer. Im hoel lo siman rishon l'siman sheni latiro b'achila. The fact that we could even go ahead and combine two simanim in the first place. Let's say a guy takes, again, you can't have shehiyah, but when we cut the simanim, you don't cut both at the same exact time. There's a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a break. You're cutting by definition through one and then through the other, even if it's a second later. But since you can combine the two pipes in order to allow a mother to be eaten in general, says Gemara, lo yoel lo latare midei nevela. Of course, yes, it's not accomplishing both because that limb's already outside. But lamaisa, that shechita is going to enable the mother to be eaten and the fetus to be eaten. Besides for that limb, there's no reason that you would say that the limb should be a nevela. And therefore, again, if it sticks out its arm in between, it'll be as if it stuck it out before shechting either one of them. And lamaisa, it will not be able to be eaten, obviously, but it will not be a nevela. BAYT Rabbi Yirmiyah, mahu lachush lizaro. Now we have another question. Forget about the two simanim. We said that an animal that puts out its arm, again, we're all going now within the mandamer, that an animal that puts out its arm, assuming it doesn't put it back, because we had a mandamer that says if it puts it back, now it's mutter, but now it puts it out and it stays out. So now you shech the mother, that for sure, that arm is gone, or that leg is gone, right? That leg cannot be eaten, it's not available, but it's now. What happens now if you go ahead and the baby's born, and that's a ben pakua. So now we know you could eat the entire ben pakua except for that leg that was sticking out. But now let's say you want to have more babies. So now you go ahead and you mate it with another animal. So the question is, what's the story with the kid? What do you mean, what's the story with the kid? Well, maybe, the Gemara has this havamina now, that maybe just like the limb of the father is prohibited, the equivalent limb in the baby will be prohibited. So you have a ben pakua that comes out. It's a regular baby walking around. It doesn't need shechita, but its limb, its right leg is aser. That baby, which is a ben pakua, now goes and mates with another regular animal, and they have a kid. The havamin in the Gemara is maybe that kid's right leg is aser just like the father's right leg. Says the Gemara, why? Hey chidami, what's the case first of all? Forget about why. First you ask what, then you ask why. What are we talking about? What? Well, what's the case? They call it mounting. So if you say that the ben pakua mounted a regular female animal, well that can't be because what do we know? We know that a ben pakua, according to at least the mandamar we're going in, cannot mate with a regular female animal. Says Gemara, who cares about the fact you're worried about the arm or the arm of the baby, not the arm of the baby? You can't even mate with a regular animal. Afilu ben pakua da'amanami. Even a regular ben pakua who didn't stick out, everybody's engaged, I like it. Even a regular ben pakua who didn't stick out its arm and comes out cannot mate with a regular female. Why? This is real lumdus. What do we say over here? You have a ben pakua that comes out. Now there's a machlokas. There's a machlokas in general. This machlokas, if you hold like one number, it's not even going to be applicable. But there's a machlokas whether we consider the child, do we consider the child to be a product of the father and the mother, or just the mother? Well, in terms of animals, what's the halacha l'maisa? You know, you're not allowed to slaughter a mother or a parent and the child on the same day. So is it mother and definitely mother and child? Is it father and child as well? So let's assume that the father, like we like to think, the father has some say or something to do with the child in general. So now what happens? Now you have a child who's born from a ben pakua and a regular female. Says the Gemara, this is real lumdus. Says the Gemara, well, what's the status of that child? Well, the father, what's the status of the father? The father needed to be shechted or didn't need to be shechted? Didn't need to be shechted. He was a ben pakua. You could have eaten him. You have to kill him. You can't eat him live. Right. But you have to kill him and then you can eat him without shechita. The mother needed to be shechted. Now you have a baby who's a combination of a parent that needed to be shechted and a parent that didn't need to be shechted. Says the Gemara, we're stuck. We don't know what to do. We can't go ahead. So you say, well, why don't we just shech the baby? You can't shech the baby. Why? Because halachically, what does it mean that the ben pakua doesn't have to be shechted? Halachically, that means the ben pakua is as if it was already shechted. Not that it just doesn't have to be shechted, it's as if it was already shechted. So this baby now, you can argue, is as if, halachically, the pipes are already severed. That's another way of saying it doesn't need to be shechted. The pipes are already severed. But, lemaisa, you're not supposed to do this, that's why you have to fast when you do chulin. So, the pipes are already severed. Well, if it's the product of the mother, though, then this baby needs to be shechted. You can't shecht an animal whose pipes have already been severed. Or if you want to argue, as Rashi alternatively says, you can argue that one of the pipes has been severed and one of them hasn't. The father's pipe, whichever one that is, has been severed and the mother's hasn't. Either way, you're stuck. So according to the man number says that we care about the father in the equation. What are you asking me a question about? What do we do about the child when the father stuck his hand out? Forget about that case. You can't even go ahead and eat the child if the father didn't stick his hand out. You're stuck. Kal vachomer if the father stuck his hand out. Forget about worrying about just the right leg of the baby. You can't eat that baby at all because it needs shchita, but you can't shecht it. So it can't be a case where a regular ben pakua married, quote unquote, a regular female. What must it be a case that we're asking about? Where a ben pakua mated with a bas pakua, however you want to say it. Okay, that must be the case, as the Gemara is going to say in just a question.
You can't put these animals on a korban either, are they? Because if their status, they're not really.
So it sounds like the ben pakua can't be brought. Again, we haven't discussed it, but it sounds like based on our svara, the ben pakua can't be brought as a korban.
You can't use it.
You can eat it. The ben pakua you could eat. You can't go ahead and mate it and then eat the then eat the son or the grandchildren of the mother. It's the child of the ben. The ben pakua is not an issue. You could eat it, and even if it's stuck out its arm, you could eat the whole thing except for the thing. The problem is now the child of the ben pakua with a regular marriage or a mixed marriage with a non-ben pakua can't go ahead and you can't eat the child. But the ben pakua itself can be eaten, but it probably can't be brought as a korban because you can't shecht it because it's already been shechted. So has the Gemara
The Shulchan have a big problem.
big problem. We think we have problems. Lo tzricha. So we're saying, according to this mandam, we're going after father and mother. Right? We're going after father and mother. The baby's a combination of father and mother, therefore the baby can't be shechted because it doesn't need shechita if it's a product of the father and needs shechita. So it's not the question, do we go?
We're in limbo.
Well, it's not in limbo. We're saying we're going after both, and therefore it needs shechita but can't have shechita, so the baby can't be eaten. Says Gemara, lo tzricha, that's what we're saying. So the baby can't be eaten. So what must be the case if we're asking about the leg of the baby? Forget about the leg of the baby. We have a problem with the entire baby. What must be the case? Lo tzricha de azal ben pakua de kavasi. The shadchan found a ben pakua with a bas pakua, and it was a beautiful shidduch. Says the Gemara, what's the story with the offspring? Aver molid aver. Do we say that each aver of the father corresponds to the aver of the child? V'chatich le v'shari. Now you have to cut off that limb of the child, which is the equivalent of the limb of the father. Or dilma mevalvel zare. Or do we say that the father's seed, his zera, is everywhere in the baby? Obviously, that's going to be more pashut. Why, says the Gemara? Hadar amar pshita de mevalvel zare. You're not going to say that, well, the right leg of the baby is the right leg of the father. First of all, that makes no sense either because the baby has a mother also. So the right leg of the father would be the right leg. First of all, the Gemara says, it doesn't even suggest it doesn't make sense because it has a mother. It says it doesn't make sense because if that's true, then you would expect that every single thing that the father has, the child will have as well. Right? Says the Gemara, D'imkain, suma yolet suma v'kitea yoli kitea. Then you would see that every single time the father's blind, he's going to have a blind child. Chas v'shalom. Or every time it has a limp, it's going to have a limp. But that's not true. How does it work? Father's seed is mixed up. This is what we want to ask. Is it not that a regular animal comes from chelev and blood and yet it's permitted? Hachanami loshna. Odilma trei sur arminan tlasa lo arminan. This is real lumdus over here. So what's the question? In general, when a father has seed, when a baby father, when a father of an animal has seed, so what's the seed made out of? The zera is made out of chelev and dam. Now we know you can't eat dam and you can't eat chelev, and yet we know that you could eat the baby of an animal. So just because a father is giving chelev and dam through its seed into the female that it's mating with, doesn't make the offspring usher because it gave something usher. So you could say what? Just like it gives blood and it gives chelev into the mother, which then goes to the baby, so the baby has some quote-unquote usher stuff in it, and yet a regular baby animal is mutter. So what's the big deal? It gives blood and it gives chelev and it gives part of its prohibited limb. Who cares? So just another thing that it's giving to the child. We all have peklach that we get from our parents, whatever. So what's another thing? So we get another thing that we got from our parents. No, what's the big deal? Or you can argue, no. Chazal said that's the metzias. It's interesting that blood and chelev makes the seed, because we know that by a woman, the blood of, we say that the dam nida makes the milk. So it's interesting that when we say that a man, I don't know if this is by a human as well, because we don't have chaylev, but the point is that obviously the blood of the animal combined with the chaylev of the animal is making the seed. So do we say, okay, it has blood, so now the child, we don't make it every single child us or a regular animal because it has blood and chaylev from the father. It's still going to be mutter. So it has blood from the father, that's chaylev from the father, now it has a little bit of the prohibited limb of the father. What's the big deal? Or do we say, no, the Torah says it's okay, Hashem says it's okay for a child to have blood and chaylev from the father. But if you're going to start throwing in a third isser, you're going to start throwing in pieces of the prohibited limb of this father who's a ben pakua, who stuck out his arm before he was born, then Lamaisa, that's going to be an issue. Yeah. No? Says the Gemara, Tlasalo Amrin and Lulaman. So the Gemara says, okay, we're not done yet. Ila Rabbi Meir, well, who are you asking this question to if that's the question of the Gemara? The Gemara says, Ila Rabbi Meir, Isser Chaylev Adam Ika, Isser Yotzei Leka. Well, this can't be within Rabbi Meir, because even though Rabbi Meir says that there is an Isser of Dam and Chaylev, and now the question would be, well, do we add on the Isser of a limb? According to Rabbi Meir, there is no Isser of a limb, because he doesn't know the Ben Pakua in the first place. He says every single animal needs to be shachted, and even if an animal sticks out its arm or doesn't stick out its arm, it always needs to be shachted. He doesn't hold the Ben Pakua. So this whole question about what do you do if a Ben Pakua who stuck out his arm mates with a regular female, and then what happens with the child, that's not a discussion, because he doesn't hold the Ben Pakua. So it must be within the other mandammers who hold the Ben Pakua. Ilu Rabbi Yehuda, Isser Yotzei Ika. He holds that yes, if the arm comes out, it's a problem, or the leg comes out, Isser Chaylev Leka. But he holds that there is no Isser of Chaylev in the father's body. Did not get Anasha Noeg Bishlil V'chel Bo'aser Div Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein Noeg Bishlil V'chel Bo'aser. He holds that the chaylev of a fetus is actually mutter. So he holds that the chaylev is mutter. So now this fetus only has what? It doesn't have aser chaylev. It only has aser dam. And it has what? Aser pieces from the father's prohibited limb. But it only has two things. And the mice is not going to be a problem. So either way, either nafmini, you're not going to have three surim. According to nobody, are you going to have chaylev dam and parts of the prohibited limb in the baby. So what's the question? Says Gemara, Ella kol mikoach lo amrinan. Rather, we say anything that comes from a source does not have the same status as a source. So we don't say just because the father, the Ben Pakua here, who stuck out his arm, had a prohibited limb, therefore he gave out all of the molecules and all of the cells of the prohibited limb into the child. We don't say that. So what's the shaila here? Why do you have a question about the kid? What are you talking about? Says the Gemara, Deshari, it's definitely fine. And we're not talking about that. And therefore, Einachanami, a Ben Pakua who has a prohibited limb, and what? A Ben Pakua is not allowed to marry a regular animal. That we already established, right? So halacha l'maaseh, if they ever ask you to paskin, Ben Pakua can't marry a regular animal, can't mate with a regular animal because you don't know what to do with the child. You want to find a shidduch for a Ben Pakua, you got to find a Bas Pakua. When you have the Ben Pakua and the Bas Pakua get together, we don't care whether the father stuck out a limb, didn't stick out a limb, that doesn't affect the baby. The baby will be a perfectly healthy baby of two Pakuas, just because, regardless of what the parents did. Okay? That's the halach l'maaseh. But what's the case here that he's asking about? He wanted to know, what's the story with a Ben Pakua who marries another animal and then the baby? What's the question he's asking here with the things coming out? We thought it meant offspring. It doesn't mean offspring. What else comes out of an animal besides for offspring? What else comes out of a mother? Milk. Says the Gemara, the shaila over here was, mahu ligmoa es chalabo. The animal we're talking about here is not the male that has an issue. It's the female that has the issue. The female Bas Pakua was part of another animal. When she was in her mother, she stuck out her arm. Now she comes back in. Now the arm's out, and then the mother's cut, and now the baby's born. Now you got this Bas Pakua who finds a good shidduch with a Ben Pakua. Then they have a child. The child's fine, no problem. But now the milk of the mother, what's the status of that milk? Since part of the Bas Pakua, the limb that was sticking out during the shechita was what? Was aser. Do we say that those cells, that they don't go into another person, that's for sure. They don't go into the baby, but those cells themselves, do they come in and do they go throughout the mother's body, and therefore the milk that comes out is now aser, an aser limb? Or do we say that the milk is okay? That's the Gemara's question. Says the Gemara, Maulig Moes Chalbo. What's the story? Can we go ahead and can we have the milk of a Bas Pakua, Yes, we could have the milk of a bas bakua, even though you can't shecht it. You could, right? You don't have to shecht it. You could eat a bas bakua. You can have its milk. But what happens to a bas bakua who stuck out its arm before it was born? Does that arm that's usher, does the cells and the molecules and the blood in that arm travel throughout the body? And now the milk for us to drink as human beings is going to be usher. Chalav da'ama lo ke'ever min achai dami v'shari. Well, we know milk in general comes from ever min achai. So milk in general, we're not so makbid from. When you milk a regular cow, the cow's alive. We're not makbid on Ever Min Achai. So what are we going to be makbid all of a sudden that, so it has some molecules of the limb that needs to be detached, that's us. So what are we going to be so makbid about milk all the time? Says Gemara, Hainami Loshna, therefore the milk will be mutter. Or Dilma, no. Hasam islay takantali surei b'shchita. In general, you're allowed to go ahead and drink milk. Why? You're allowed to drink milk because milk eventually, what? Because the animal eventually will be mutter through shchita. Therefore, you could drink the milk. This limb will never be mutter. Says the Gemara, this part will never be mutter. Therefore, says the Gemara, you can't drink the milk. Teiku, tishbi yitaris kushivaris. And therefore, not only should you be drinking chalav Yisrael milk, you should make sure that you don't drink milk from a bas pakua who stuck out her arm during the thing. So it says this is chalav Yisrael milk, and this milk is not from a bas pakua who stuck out her arm in the middle of her mother's shchita.
There's a havamina to think that chalav would be aser.
I mean, we're saying take you. Lamaisi, you can't drink the milk of a bas pakua who stuck out her arm.
I mean, just
saying teku, since we don't know the answer, we have to be machmer, and you can't drink the milk of a bas pakua who stuck out her arm before she was born. Yes.
You can't have milk from a bas pakua later because she's already considered shechted, and you can't have milk from a shechted.
Oh, so that's a shayla. I would think you could have milk. No, it sounds like you'd have milk from a regular bas pakua. That's fine. Yeah.
It's considered shechted already. And a shechted animal.
You could have milk from a shechted animal.
No, if it's dead already, you can't take the milk out. No.
I'm not sure about that. You can't take milk out of the other. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
okay. It doesn't sound like it because the whole shayla of the thing here is that it's still alive.
Right. I know.
I would think that it sounds like it's okay to take milk from a bas pakua. Says the Gemara, Choteich Meubar. Dr. Savage is getting nervous. We're not going to finish. Choteich Meubar. If one cuts off, look at the clock. I don't want you to get nervous. We could always do the second daf in 5 minutes. Choteich Meubar. If one cuts off part of a fetus that's in the womb, we said, and you leave it in the womb, then you can eat it, right? If you cut off part of the fetus and you leave it in the womb, you can eat it. But if you cut off part of the animal and you leave it like the kidney and the spleen, and remember from yesterday, we said kidney and spleen because those are not trephos. You leave the kidney and the spleen in the animal, you can't eat them once they're cut off. Says Gemara Minolan. How do we know this whole idea of ben paku in the first place? Torah says, V'chol behema mafreses parsa v'shosa shesa shtei prasos malaskera ba behema. You have a behema in a behema. We know behemoths. A behema in a behema. You're a behema in a behema. How is that possible? That's a fetus inside the womb. That's going to be osatocheli. You could eat it. Says Gemara elameata yamirubo. Well, now we have a problem because we know that there's something called tamura. Tamura, which you're not supposed to do, but it takes effect. If I go in and I exchange one animal for another, both of them become consecrated. I'm not supposed to do that. It's an isser, but if I do, both of them become consecrated. That only works if it's a behema. You're calling now, your limud is calling what? Is calling a fetus a behema. Chol behema bebehema. The behema, the fetus, in another behema, the mother. So you're referring to a fetus as a behema. Therefore, by definition, just using pashtus seichel, what should we assume? That if you do tamura of a fetus, if you say this fetus should go ahead and should be exchanged for this regular other animal, not for the mother, for another regular animal, Joe Schmo, it should take effect because a fetus is a behema according to the pasuk. Says Gemara, Allah matan eimirin lo ivarin beubarin velo ubarin beivarin velo ivarin veubarin bishleimin velo shleimin bahen. The last part, you can't go ahead and it doesn't take effect if you have an ubar for an aver, or you have an aver or an ubar for a shalim. So you have a regular animal, and I have the ubar here, and I say this ubar in the mother should be tmura for this other third party animal. It doesn't take effect. Why not? This is a behema and this is a behema. Obviously, if you're going to refer to a fetus as a behema, there's no reason that the tamura should not take effect. Says Gemara, Ela Makra, you're right. We don't learn that a fetus is allowed from behema. We learn it from v'chol behema, from the v'chol, not from the behema part. So it's not referring to a fetus as a behema, it's referring to it as a v'chol. Any animal. In the any, we make a drasha that includes a fetus. L'rabba says avlat. Ihachi, if that's true, then why can't we say v'chol? Any includes what? Any includes not only the fetus, it includes the kidney and the spleen also. Afilu chodech minat chol minat kloyos nami. Alam etnan chodech minat uba shemea muter b'achila minat chol minat kloyos asher b'achila. Amakra osa tochelu. Only the fetus you can eat. Shlema v'lo chasera. So it includes v'chol, not v'chol behema. V'chol includes a fetus, and we know that it only includes a fetus and not the kidney and the spleen because the kidney and the spleen is part of the mother, not the separate fetus, and osa means it has to be whole like the fetus. This is what you were asking me about before about a camel. If you open up an animal and you find it's a form of a dove, and I think we should actually say that it says the form of a dove because a dove's a kosher animal. Camel for sure, there's no havamina. But like we said, if you have a kosher cow inside it, it's deformed, you can't eat it, or maybe you can. Alama Rabbi Yochanan, if you're going to tell me that anything inside another animal, v'chol, teaches me any fetus is mutter, Alama Rabbi Yochanan, why can't you eat it if it's a demusiona? Says Gemara, Ba'ina prasos veleka. Yes, we said you can't eat a camel inside of a cow. You can eat a cow inside of a cow. But what did we say? We said it doesn't have to have full split hooves, but it has to have at least split hooves. So why are you allowed to eat if it doesn't have full split hooves? Again, the whole pasuk here is talking about mafreses parsa. So we learn v'chol behema. V'chol means even the fetus. Bibehema, you can eat it. Mafreses parsa, and you can even eat what? A cow that's not totally split hooves, but it has to have at least split hooves. So if you find a cow inside of a cow, even if it's not a fully formed cow and it doesn't have fully split hooves, you can still go ahead and you can eat the fetus. But if you find a dove inside of a cow, you have other problems. But if you find a dove inside of a cow or a camel inside of a cow, then lemaisa, you can't just eat anything you find inside of a cow. It has to at least have the form of a kosher animal. Says in Gemara, Rav Shimi bar Ashi amar la'olam kidikamas meikara. No, you don't learn a fetus from v'chol, you learn it from v'chol behema. If you learn it from behema, then what? Then why can't it be used as tamura? Why is tamura not chal? Says in Gemara, de kakashilach ein memirin. So why is it not chal for tmura if we refer to the fetus as a behema? Hamani, that's Rabbi Shimon. He demakish tmura lemaiser. It's a separate reason. Yes, this fetus is a behema, and in general, one behema which you do tmura for another behema, it is chal. So why is this behema, this fetus, why is it not chal as tmura for another animal? For a separate reason, demakish tmura lemaiser, because there's another requirement by tmura that has to be like maiser. Ma maserina noag bevarim v'ubarim. When you pass them underneath the stick, underneath the shevet, you only pass live animals from maiser behema underneath the stick, and then you go and every 10th one you hit. So you don't pass avarim, you don't pass limbs and ubers underneath the thing. You don't count that. Therefore, what? It makes a connection between meiser and tamura. Therefore, even though ein chanami, a fetus is referred to as a behema, just like by meiser we don't count the ubars as part of the count, we're not going to allow ubars to take effect and to be chal by tamura. Uminat temra. How do we know that this is Rabbi Shimon? Ditnan Amar Rabbi Yossi v'halo b'mukdashim. Again, get the general klalos. Forget about every single detail. V'halo b'mukdashim. In the case of mukdashim, Omer ragla shel zu ola. Listen to this case. If I have an ola here, if I have a regular animal and I say the leg of this animal should be an ola. Separate case. The leg of this animal should be an ola. Kula ola. According to one opinion, this entire thing becomes an ola. That's Rabbi Yossi. If I say the leg of this animal should be an ola, it's the same thing as saying this entire animal should be an ola, and it becomes an ola. So too, af kishayomar regel shel zu tachazu. If I say the leg of this animal should be tmura for that entire animal, it's the equivalent, just like when I said the leg of this animal should be an ola, the entire thing's an ola. If I say the leg of this animal should be tmura for that, it's as if I said the entire animal should be tmura for that, and obviously it's going to be chal. Tehekula tmura tachteha. That's Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi, though, is talking to somebody. He's arguing on somebody. Who's he arguing on? Well, whoever he's arguing on, whoever the Tana is, must hold what? Either he argues with him totally, or as Rashi points out, he's arguing with him on the second point. That means Rabbi Yossi seems to be talking to somebody who's not here. And he seems to be saying to him, listen, you agree with me, because if he didn't agree with him on the first point, then what's he forcing the second part on him? But he's saying to him, you agree with me that if I say the leg of this of this animal should be an ola, you agree with me that what? That the entire thing is an ola. So why are you refusing to agree with me that if I say the leg of this animal should be tmura for this animal, that the entire animal becomes tmura for that animal? Why do you, what's wrong with that svara? It makes a lot of sense. But who's he talking to? That's what the Gemara wants to know. And it's going to establish he's talking to Rabbi Shimon. Says the Gemara, Laman Kamahadle, who is he talking to? Elima Rabbi Meir Rabbi Yehuda, who agree that what? That if you say the leg of an ola is an ola, the entire thing becomes an ola. But they argue and they say if you say the leg of this thing should be a tmur, it's not going to work. Mi Islay Hasvara Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda don't hold that to Tanya. Tanya Yachol Haomer Ragal Shazu Ola Te Kula Ola Tamalomar Kol Asher Yitem Mimenu Lashem Yeh Kodesh Mimenu Kodesh V'lo Kulo Kodesh. So you said no. We're going to see in a second. This is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion and Rabbi Meir's opinion that if you say the leg of an ola should be an ola, the entire thing does not become an ola. What becomes an ola? Only the leg. Now you're stuck. What does that mean? The leg of an animal becomes an ola. So now you got the leg of an animal that has to be brought in as an ola, but the rest of the behema doesn't, and the rest of the behema is not even consecrated as an ola. So what do you do now? You might think you just take this animal to chulin. You can't do that. Why? Well, you have the part of the animal that's an ola. You can't just go ahead and throw it in chulin. So what do you do? What do you do? You sell it to somebody who needs to bring an ola. Then they'll what? Then they'll consecrate the rest of the animal as an ola. You take the money, the money received for this animal is chulin. It goes to the owner, except for what? Except the money equivalent of the leg is going to be holy because that part of the animal was an ola. So now the animal was brought as an ola, which it needed to be brought, but didn't have to be bring by me. I got the money for all of the animal except for the part that I said was an ola. Div Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. So you see that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda don't even agree to the first part. So it can't be that Rabbi Yossi is talking to them. You who agree to me that the leg of an ola, the whole thing becomes an ola, they don't say that. So who's he talking to? Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon Omrim. So what do you see? Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon agree to the first part, that if you say that leg should be an ola, the whole thing becomes an ola. Therefore, Rabbi Yosef is saying to them, so why don't you agree to me that what? That if I say the leg of this should be a tamura, that the entire thing becomes a tamura. Says Gemara, Leman, who is this? Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Miyislei Haisvara, Ela Lav Rabbi Shimon. You see that he's talking to Rabbi Shimon, and we see that Rabbi Shimon is a Tana who says that what? That even though if you say the leg of an ola becomes an ola, when you talk about legs and limbs by tmura don't take effect. And that's why over here as well, again, if you go ahead and this case over here where we talk about tmura, even though we could refer to it as a behema fetus, but we don't deal with fetuses and limbs and stuff by tmura. So it could be called the behema and it's still not going to be in the parsha of tmura. Says Gemara, lo, you can argue that, but you don't have to say that. Rabbi Yossi, time at the nafshi kamer. Maybe Rabbi Yossi's talking to himself. Right? Not everybody talks to somebody. Maybe he's talking to himself and he's cheshboning out with himself, but he's not necessarily arguing on Rabbi Shimon. And therefore, we're not saying Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold this, but we can't prove from here that Rabbi Shimon is the one who holds that limbs are going to be tomorrow. I just want to do a little bit more. With 5 more minutes, I want to do the Mishnah because tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh and we don't have any time. So says in Gemara, starting regular time, tomorrow. So we know that there's a Bechor. If there's a male firstborn lamb, kid or calf, so it becomes a Bechor. Bechor goes to the Kohen, and he has to go in and bring it as an offering, and he gets to eat the meat. But if it has a blemish, then he has to wait till a blemish, and then or today he has to wait for a blemish, and then he could eat it. So now the question becomes, we said if it's having trouble delivering its firstborn, and that's why, again, that's the most common case. We're going to have to cut off pieces. So now the Bechor sticks out one arm, and you have to cut it off to save the mother. Sticks out another arm, you have to cut it off. You could throw each of those to the dogs. Why? Because even though a Bechor in general has Kedusha, and you can never throw the Bechor to the dogs, each limb that you're cutting off piece by piece is not yet considered to have Kedusha of a Bechor until the head comes out, or until Rubo comes out. Therefore, Yatza Rubo, but if the majority or the head comes out, then Hareze Yikaber. Then if it dies, or you can't use it for whatever reason, then you have to bury it. V'nifteres min ha-bechora. And the mother, just parenthetically, when rove of the animal comes out, now it's pater from bechor. If you remember yesterday, we said peter rechem. Once it comes out, once it has its first animal that comes out, even if that animal is not viable, even if that animal dies, even if it's a stillborn, we said peter rechem in terms of the halachos of bechor. Right? So now it doesn't have to be redeemed. But we said that unless it's viable, the next baby will actually get the double Yerusha. That's what we said yesterday.
So if it's maksha, why don't they do a C-section and take it out?
Okay, so it's not so pashut. Obviously, right. Obviously, they couldn't do a C-section. What?
Why isn't Aver Minachai?
What's Aver Minachai? Because the fetuses are not born. That's what we're talking about in general.
But it's part of the mother.
You can't eat it.
Considering part of the mother.
You can't eat it, but therefore that's fine. So considering part of the mother, we have to cut it off. You can't eat it, Aver Minachai, but you're allowed to burn it because we're not considering it to be a Bechor. That's all we care about here.
You can't feed it to the dogs.
You can feed it to the dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Oh. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't think otherwise. Says the Gemara Idmar Yatza Shlish. Listen to this question. If you have a baby that comes out, this is the firstborn of a mother, and a third of it comes out. And at that point, you sell the animal to an ovei kochavim. What's the chiddush? We know that the whole siman of Bechor, the whole parsha of Bechor is only chal on the Bechor of an animal that's 100% Jewish, a Jewish animal. If there's an animal that's owned by a non-Jew or even partly by a non-Jew, there's no halacha of Bechor. So now, if you would have sold it to the ovei kochavim before any part of the animal came out, nothing to talk about. Bechor is out of the parsha. We're out of the parsha of Bechor. But here, a third, less than half, came out. If half would have come out, then there's also nothing to talk about. Ruo came out, and there's nothing to talk about. But a third came out, then you sold it to the ovei kochavim. So now the question is, when the majority comes out, what do we look at? Well, a third, again, I didn't see this in the Rishonim, but the way I understand this is a third is still a majority of half. Remember we said 2/6 is a majority of 3/6. Right? Majority, we had this a while ago. So a third is still a majority of the half. Once half comes out, you're done with the whole parsha of Bechor. That's how I understood it. I didn't see the Rishonim, that's how I understood it. So what do you have? You have a third that comes out, then you sell it to ovei kochavim, v'chazav yatsa shlish acher, then another third comes out. So now you have a majority that came out of the animal, 2/3 came out. Rafuna amar kadosh, Rabba amar eno kadosh. So the machlokes, whether the selling of it to the ovei kochavim had any impact or not. Rafuna says it didn't have any impact, and therefore this Bechor is actually a Bechor. And Rav Rabba said that once you sold it, even though you sold it after a third was born, it was chal, and therefore this Bechor is not really a Bechor. Rafuna amar kadosh, why is it kadosh? Kasavar lemafreya kadosh. He holds that a Bechor is lemafreya. V'chevan denafik leirube. Once the majority comes out, that means 1/2 comes out. Igle milsa lemafreya demeikara have a kadosh. Once 51% of the animal comes out, at that point you freeze the frame and you say, what do we do now? We go back to when it started coming out. When it started coming out, right. So when it started coming out, was it owned by a non-Jew or not? No. He only sold it after a third came out. So once half comes out, we freeze it. We say at this point, what? The way I'm understanding it, more than 50% came out before it was owned by a non-Jew. Therefore, it's going to be a Bechor. And the sale is not going to be chal. You don't have a right to sell a Bechor to a non-Jew. Right? Again, I was making it a little complicated. If you want to oversimplify it, you have a third that comes out. You sell it to the non-Jew. Once 50% comes out, you freeze the picture according to Rafuna. Rafuna says, okay, right now, what do we got? Right now, we're going to go back lemafreya to the beginning. Now that it's a Bechor, we're going to go back to the beginning. At that point in time, there was no ovei kochavim involved in the picture, and therefore this animal is going to be a Bechor. Rabba mar eno kadosh. Why? Because umay dezavin lo klum zavin. That's what he says. Rabba mar eno kadosh. Kasavra mikanu laba kadosh. He says you freeze it at the point that the majority comes out. You look what happens. You don't go back. Now that 51% came out, you freeze it. What's the status right now? Right now, it's partly owned by a non-Jew. It's partly owned by an ovei kochavim. Therefore, my dezavin shaper zavin. Therefore, it was sold, whatever sold, and therefore it's not going to be a Bechor. That's what he says. Do you freeze it now when 51% came out and say, well, right now it's owned by a non-Jew partly? Or do you say once 51% comes, you go back to the beginning? At the beginning, it wasn't owned by a non-Jew, and therefore, lemaisa, it's going to be a Bechor, and the non-Jew sale will be nothing. There's another case where they're going to have the opposite opinions, but the same svara. Yatsa shlish derech dofen. Let's say a third comes out through the wall, the mother's wall. Again, you had to make like some type of incision, and you had to take it out of C-section. And then ushnei shlish derech rechem. But then the mother got better, and the other 2/3. I don't know exactly how that works. You have a third that comes out this way, and then the other 2/3 go out that way. Okay. Rav Huna amar eino kadosh.
By cesarean, it's not kadosh.
Right. So that's a shaila. Over here, only a third came out cesarean, but 2/3 came out non-cesarean. So if it's a cesarean, it's not kadosh. So Rav Huna amar eino kadosh, Rabba amar kadosh. Again, they have opposite opinions here, but we'll see the same svaras. Rav Huna amar eino kadosh. Why? Rav Huna l'tamei that says once 50% comes out, what do? You go back to the beginning. What's the first thing that happened? The C-section. Damar lemafreya kadosh. It goes back and it's sanctified from the beginning. In the beginning, what? The first third, which again is a majority of when it gets to 50%, the way I'm understanding, the first third was done where? Was done through the stomach. Therefore what? You're going to say, Eino Kadosh, it's not a real Bechor. Uveruba kama lese berechem. The first majority, i.e., when it got to 51%, a third of it had been what? A third of it had come out through the stomach. Therefore, it's not going to be kadosh. Using that same svara. Rabba amar kadosh, because what does he say? He says you freeze it where you are now. Rabba letame de amar mikanu la'aba kadosh. He says that when the majority emerges from the womb, that what? Now from this point forward, that what? You don't go back to the beginning. Now you look at a majority of the total. A majority of the total, when all is said and done, is what? A majority of the total was done through the rechem and not through the stomach. Viruba derech rechem nafik. So again, if you say mikanu laba, do you go back to the beginning and you count, the way I'm understanding, the first 50% and you see what was rove of the first 50%, which here was what? Which here was through the stomach? Or do you say no, you look at rove of the entire thing when it's done and rove of the entire thing with through the regular rechem, and therefore it'll be kadosh. Utzricha, why do you need both? Diyash minin baha. If you would have just told me the first case, baha kamar Rafuna, I would think that I only go, Rafuna says kadosh in the case where it's going to be what? I'm only going to say that what? Rafuna says you go limafreya only where it's going to be a chumrah. Right, he says you go to the beginning, it's going to be a chumrah. We ignore the sale tidol bechavim. You start from the beginning, and limafreya. I'll say you go limafreya when it's going to be a chumrah, and you're going to say kadosh. However, what bishum de lekula? Because if you wouldn't say that, it would come out with a kula. Val bahach de lechumrah. In the second case, we're saying mikanu laba is a chumrah. Maybe he's always machmir. Maybe in the second case he'll agree that you don't go limafreya, because if you go limafreya in the second case, you end up with what? Without a bechor. Maybe he'll always be machmir, and he'll say you only go limafreya in the first case, so you have the bechor, but in the second case you don't go limafreya because you won't end up with a bechor. And also ema modile l'rabba, and the other way v'iyamar baha. And if you say that they only argue in the second case, baha kamar rabba, I only say that Rabba will say what in the second case, where Rabba comes out again kadosh. But in the first case, what of Abaha ema modile l'rafuna, that'll be kadosh shricha. So you might think that both of them will come out l'chumra. Therefore, you need both to say that no, they keep their svara throughout, and therefore each of them will have a case of kadosh in one case, and each of them will have a case of eino kadosh in another case. Shkayach.